Good evening. I'm Jim Healy from the Finance Committee, and we recommend adoption of Article 14 to set the annual department revolving fund spending limits. As some of the articles that you will see in this May's annual town meeting warrant, some of these are regular. They come every year. And this particular article also is before us again on a regular basis. And that is because Massachusetts law requires that town meeting on or before July 1 of each fiscal year, they must vote on each revolving fund that's established under the revolving fund law, and they must set the spending limit for that fund. I think I'll give you two examples of it, but before we get into it, as a general principle, this is really not a budgetary item. We are not appropriating funds from the levy or from free cash or anywhere else in order to pay or provide these services. The key is that before any money within these funds is spent, it first has to be raised by the citizens who are paying for and requesting the services that are involved. There cannot be any deficit spending. So no monies can be spent out of a revolving fund unless and until they have already been received. And if the monies aren't raised, they can't spend what is in the revolving fund. In essence, this whole article is revenue neutral, and it's also expense neutral. I'll give you a couple of examples of the revolving funds. The first I'd like to illustrate is the public facility use, which is a fairly high amount of $250,000 as a spending limit. This is a fund that's available for those citizens who want to rent our public buildings, in particular our gymnasiums, which happens quite frequently, and of course Powers Hall. The monies that are raised from those fees that are paid would then be used to pay for the expenses of the program that's offered. The second example I would offer is the school transportation revolving fund. And it's important to note that that is not for the required transportation that the law mandates with respect to either special education students or with respect to our students that live beyond a certain mileage outside of the school. This is for voluntary use, where parents or grandparents want their children to be able to take a bus to school. They pay for that service, and then we use those monies in order to pay for the vendor to provide those busing services. Each one of these revolving funds operates in the same way. A service is requested by a citizen, they pay for that service, and then we use those monies in order to pay for what the service costs. That's how the revolving fund works. And each of these spending limits requires that only the funds that are raised within that limit are able to be spent. The Finance Committee recommends adoption of Article 14.